right?
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to an ambush stream on a Tuesday, right? Yes, it's Tuesday. Turbulent Tuesday. Yes, we return once again to an article read. This one I have to thank Cosmic over on the Discord for alerting me to. I'm not 100% sure if Cosmic is an alias for someone else currently in the chat, because trying to keep track of everybody's different nicknames can be a chore. But Cosmic, thank you so much for letting me know about this article just released today and right in my wheelhouse, as it were. But before I get to that, who's joining me for this ambush stream on a Tuesday afternoon? John Miller, TC, Miranda Stone. Who else is here? D5 280. Who else? Somnambular Nation, Mike Savage, Tall Person, Zero the Hero 909, Resolute Germ, Lesser Logic, Gen T Maxi. Good afternoon, all of you, wherever you are. They say Lesser Logic. Hello, Lesser Logic. Robert Pincus, Super Koopa TV. Everybody's popping in now. Are you guys, just as an aside, and I'll look later, but are you guys getting alerts about these things? Is YouTube being nice to me or not? I can't tell day to day, and I've heard mixed reviews from people on the subject. So either way, what's going on in the wonderful world of DEI? Well, according to the Wall Street Journal, if you can believe it, the legal assault on corporate diversity efforts has begun. Well, it's about time. I've only been talking about this for the better part of 7 years and asking with every single video I do on the subject practically, how is this legal? But we covered a little bit of what the possibilities are on the legality of it in a previous stream regarding some Supreme Court decisions from the distant past. I wonder if those will be brought up here. I guess we'll find out. But yeah, let's go through this article that was posted just today, Tuesday, Turbulent Tuesday. A guy in his room. Good afternoon. All right. So the legal assault on corporate diversity efforts has begun. Conservative groups, you mean those groups that read Title VII out of the Civil Rights Act of 1964? Okay. Challenge Amazon, Comcast, and others using many of the same tools that helped kill affirmative action programs in colleges. Well, that's kind of a misnomer. Sorry. Let me back up a little bit. The tools used to justify affirmative action in colleges was found to be lacking in legal standing, and that is the argument of diversity. That's what happened. When affirmative action went by the wayside, everything that was attempted to prop it up also went by the wayside. And so if you can't justify discriminating people on the basis of race in colleges on the basis of diversity, and since race is on equal footing legally with gender and sexual orientation and religion and everything else on Title VII, as opposed to Title VI, and you've also got the Equal Protection Clause. Anyway, I'm not a lawyer, but, you know, I do own a copy of Law and Order Season 1 on DVD. Conservative legal activists successfully challenged the use of affirmative action by universities. Now they are going after diversity initiatives widely deployed across American corporations. Some companies are already reconsidering their efforts. I think they were reconsidering their efforts as of last October, after the oral arguments occurred before the Supreme Court, when they found out exactly what was at stake if affirmative action went by the wayside, but that might just be my theory. In lawsuits, shareholder letters, and petitions to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, activists are using some of the same tactics that progressive groups have used to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI programs. As somebody's revving their engine outside because my windows are made of single pane paper. Let me try that again. In lawsuits, shareholder letters, and petitions to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, activists are using some of the same tactics that progressive groups have used to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI programs. They are arguing that companies are violating rules against race and sex discrimination, including those drawn from legislation designed to secure the rights of Black Americans. Well, legislation designed to secure the rights of all Americans, but okay, that included therein certainly, but not exclusive to. Comcast settled a case accusing it of illegally favoring minority-owned small business customers with grants and marketing advice. Oh, did they now? Amazon has been sued in Texas over a program offering an extra $10,000 to Black or Latino-owned delivery service contractors. What? What, major corporations giving special treatment to vendors and other contractors based on the race of their owners? Man, I've never heard of such a thing. Jeez. Oh, man, I feel like such a hipster. I feel like such a hipster. It's like, dude, I was there when discriminating on the basis of race was like totally cool, man. Or at least according to the companies that I was looking at and everything. Anyway. Starbucks directors and executives are being sued by shareholders, arguing they violated their duty to investors by supporting diversity policies. Dozens of corporate law firms and major employers have received letters from Republican officials warning them to adhere to laws prohibiting racial quotas and preferences in employment and contracting decisions. Yeah, where were you guys 6 years ago? I mean, affirmative action aside, nothing about the affirmative action situation was preventing this from happening over the last 6 or 7 years. Nothing at all. Title VII was still in place the entire time. I mean, I'm glad it's happening, but where have you guys been? Edward Blum, who also organized the challenge that culminated in the U.S. Supreme Court's decision to overturn affirmative action, used a recently formed nonprofit group to sue Georgia investment manager Fearless Fund, charging that a grant program for startups is discriminatory. Fearless makes early-stage investment in businesses run by women of color. Companies say their initiatives fall within the law. Okay, now this is the question. Will the Wall Street Journal bring up Steelworkers v. Weber, 1979, and Johnson v. Transportation Agency, 1987? Because so far as I know, those are the only legal precedents that may provide some legal cover to workplace affirmative action programs. Let's see what the Wall Street Journal says. Many say they remain committed to increasing the demographic diversity of their workforces and suppliers, citing business benefits and the hurdles some groups, demographics, continue to face in American corporations. Okay, so all they are doing there is admitting that, yes, we are going to continue discriminating in both employment and contracts on the basis of race and or gender. That's all they're saying there. They remain committed to being discriminatory in their work practices. Okay. Privately, many are asking their lawyers if and how much they should modify their methods in light of the affirmative action decision. It's never been about affirmative action. It's always been about Title VII, and Title VII has been there the whole time. This is so, the last 6 years have been just an absolute bizarro world to me on this subject. But now that we've actually reached a point where people are asking the questions that should have been asked the entire time, still, they're looking for ways to still be bad. Many of the legal efforts against corporate diversity programs predate the High Court's June 29th decision. Yes, because again, anybody with half a brain saw the writing on the wall during the oral arguments. That ruling, centered squarely on higher education admissions, didn't address employment or business practices. But it added momentum to an effort by conservative activists and public officials to challenge corporate diversity programs. Why? Wall Street Journal, why? What is it about the affirmative action decision that has had the knock-on effect to DEI programs? You cannot be that ignorant. Your imaginations cannot be that lacking. What was it about the argument for affirmative action that puts DEI under threat? I mean, not that it shouldn't have already been under threat this whole time, but I guess more so. Can you imagine what that is? Companies have long relied on rationales similar to those buttressing affirmative action at universities. Yes, even though affirmative action at universities is underscored by nothing that applies to employers. That there are benefits to diversity. By dismissing that rationale, the High Court weakened the justification for other programs that promote it. Yes, okay, thank you, Wall Street Journal, at least in passing terms, yes, thank you for making that connection. But tell me, affirmative action aside, how have these programs in corporations been legal this entire time, regardless of affirmative action? Because they have nothing to do with each other. Affirmative action had nothing to do with employment. So haven't these programs and corporations been on shaky ground the entire time? Quote, anything a company's doing that is treating someone differently because of their race, even if it's a small part of their decision-making process, is going to be scrutinized, unquote, said Dan Lennington, a former Wisconsin Deputy Solicitor General and Deputy Counsel for Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, the legal group behind the Comcast lawsuit. Employment lawyers say it is likely a matter of time before one of these cases reaches the Supreme Court. Some companies have decided they aren't going to wait for the court to weigh in. That is especially true for programs that were quickly adopted after the May 2020 killing of George Floyd in police custody, said Angela Berg, who led the global DEI practice at HR consulting firm Mercer and now consults independently. Some executives, quote, were uncomfortable with equity programs from the get-go, unquote, said Berg, referring to initiatives such as mentorship or training programs. The Supreme Court has changed the risk calculation, she said. Okay, again, in my opinion, the risk calculation has been there from the beginning. It had nothing to do with affirmative action. Yes, by some magical mystic chords of connection, companies were relying on the idea of the approval of affirmative action in colleges and universities to justify their own efforts in companies and businesses, but they never had any legal cover to do so. So it just boggles my mind that it took this happening for anybody to stop for a second and say, oh, wait a second. Could we be under some kind of legal liability for discriminating on the basis of race or gender? Could we? Could we? Bizarre. Companies are evaluating diversity programs in light of litigation threats that often seem designed to stoke public fear, said Fordham University law professor Atanuki Adiran. Adiran? I know I'm probably screwing that up. She has received inquiries on the subject from an association of human resource officers at large companies. Quote, most of what the firms are doing for diversity is legal, she said. Companies may need to be ready to defend themselves, unquote. How is it legal? How? Is it the two decisions from the Supreme Court that put some really, really tenuous requirements on an affirmative action program in a workplace? Okay. A Civil War weapon. Okay. Cable giant Comcast limited a small business grant program to companies at least 51% owned and operated by someone identifying as Black, Indigenous, a person of color, or female, people the company said had been disproportionately affected by the coronavirus pandemic. Yeah, you know, all those white males that are just naturally immune to disease. The Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, in suing Comcast in April 2022, cited the 1866 Civil Rights Act. One provision, often referred to as Section 1981, says all Americans should have the same rights to sue and enforce contracts, quote, as is enjoyed by white citizens, unquote. The Wisconsin Institute, which says it supports litigation promoting, quote, individual initiative and ordered liberty that leads to prosperity, unquote, essentially turned that section on its head by gathering several white male business owners as plaintiffs. Well, when you discriminate on the basis of race or gender, someone is being victimized, aren't they? In mid-September, when Comcast announced the next round of grants, it opened the program to all small businesses. 2 months later, Comcast settled the litigation. Why? Why did you open it up to all small businesses? If it was perfectly legal and fine and everything else, why aren't you still championing it the way it was originally designed? What changed? Or what was always true, but you just suddenly decided to comply with the law and the spirit thereof? A Comcast spokesman declined to comment. In a news release about the program in May, Comcast described the program as evolving, quote, from helping businesses survive the pandemic to helping businesses and their communities thrive with a focus on economic growth, unquote. There's certain elements of your program you left out of that, but okay. A federal lawsuit against Amazon.com filed outside Dallas in July 2022 also invokes the 1866 law. It targets a program awarding an additional $10,000 to Black, Latino, and Native American delivery service contractors to defray startup costs. The lawsuit also criticizes an Amazon program aimed at helping Black-owned businesses sell products on Amazon's website. The plaintiff, a Denton County, Texas resident, wants to apply to start an Amazon delivery service contractor, but says she won't until the company eliminates the assistance for minority contractors or offers whites and Asians the same benefit, the complaint says. The plaintiff can't apply to become an Amazon delivery service partner, quote, without subjecting herself to racial discrimination, unquote, the lawsuit says. Well, is she wrong? The case seeks class action status. Well, thank goodness. Again, where have you guys been? I've been profiling declarations by major corporations for years about legally questionable discriminatory practices in their employment, in their contracting, and their other businesses. Okay, I'm glad it's happening, but geez Louise. The case seeks class action status. It was filed by attorneys including the General Counsel of America First Legal, a Washington, D.C. nonprofit headed by former Trump administration advisor Stephen Miller. Oh, Lord. Well, that already puts it into question regardless of its intent. America First Legal describes itself as combating, quote, an unholy alliance of corrupt special interests, big tech titans, the fake news media, and liberal Washington politics, unquote. How about combating programs and initiatives that are inherently antithetical to American law and jurisprudence? How about combating notions that should be in the dustbin of history at this point when it comes to employment in this country? How about that? It doesn't have to be a partisan idea. You can stand on federal law as established in 1964 and not put any of this other propaganda on the side of it. Why do that? Okay, anyway. Amazon has moved to dismiss the lawsuit, saying its selection process for delivery contractors is race neutral. What? And that the plaintiff doesn't have standing to sue because she hasn't applied to be an Amazon contractor. A program awarding an additional $10,000 to Black, Latino, and Native American delivery service contractors to defray startup costs. Says its selection process for delivery contractors is race neutral. No, that's not what they're talking about, Amazon. It's the $10,000 bonus for your melanin count. That's the problem. Not about becoming a contractor. It's about giving bonuses on the basis of your race, Amazon. In court filings, the company calls her complaint, quote, the epitome of an abstract and generalized grievance by a member of the general population about an internal corporate program that has no actual effect on her, unquote. You mean like her applying means she's disallowed from gaining a $10,000 benefit to startup costs? You mean that complaint? Wow, the general population. What does that mean, Amazon? A member of the I mean, you see, I don't want to have to try to read between the lines of a cookbook here, but given the circumstances, how can I not? Amazon declined to comment on the lawsuit. Quote, we believe in the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion, unquote, a spokesman said in a written statement. Quote, we'll investigate the potential impact of any legal decisions on our programs and adjust as necessary to comply with the law, unquote. Why weren't you doing that before this? You guys can afford a lawyer or three, I think. You're Amazon. If you didn't know whether or not you were operating within the law before, why would you have to re-examine it now? The workplace discrimination argument. Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 bans workplace discrimination. The recent affirmative action decision didn't address employment practices directly. No, but Supreme Court Justice Neil Gorsuch in a concurring opinion noted, quote, materially identical language, unquote, on discrimination in the laws governing higher education and employment. Yes, Yes. Again, for anybody who's interested, if you're really curious, and I keep bringing this up and I will continue to do so, if you go back to the oral arguments before the Supreme Court back in October of 2022, where the lawyers for Harvard and University of North Carolina argued for affirmative action, and you listen to their justifications and their rationales, you would be hard-pressed to tell them apart from listening to a diversity consultant or chief executive officer at a company for diversity, because they are the same. Their rationale, their justification, the benefits supposedly brought upon an organization for employing these things are the same. And so if that argument goes by the wayside under the Constitution in one instance, it's a pretty quick trip to the other. Starbucks officers and directors were sued in August of 2022 by National Center for Public Policy Research, a conservative think tank that owns 56 shares in the coffee chain. Well, 56 or 5, what's the difference? A shareholder's a shareholder, but whatever. It accuses Starbucks of violating Title VII in Section 1981 and the officials of breaching their fiduciary duty to shareholders by embracing policies, it says, violate anti-discrimination law in areas including employment, supplier contracts, and executive compensation. Under the policy, Starbucks says it wants at least 30% of its workforce at all levels to be Black, Indigenous, or people of color by 2025. Oh, so they have a bigger goal than the Air Transport Association, because Air Transport Association wants 25 by 2025. That's 25% in the executive levels. Or maybe that was just for women. I think that was just for women. My bad. Oh, but here's the thing. That's a quota, isn't it? That's a quota goal, isn't it? Now, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm happy to be corrected because God knows I'm no lawyer, when I read the Supreme Court decisions on steelworkers and transportation agency talking about affirmative action programs in the workplace, within those decisions, it was said that quotas cannot be used. So if you are using a quota, even those decisions, as far as I understand it, will not protect you. But anyway, so Starbucks set a 30% goal based on race. It plans to implement an analytics tool that lets managers see their progress and uses workforce diversity measures to help set executive pay. Okay, so you're going to put a bounty on hiring people on the basis of their race. Let's just think about that for a second. You're going to incentivize with money hiring decisions based on race in order to hit a percentage goal within a time frame. Okay. Starbucks and company officials are seeking to dismiss the case with a hearing scheduled for Friday. Oh, coming up this week. Okay. They say NCPPR hasn't shown any real harm from the policies, which are covered by a legal principle that gives company officials broad discretion in running their businesses, and that courts have upheld diversity policies as permissible. Well, but are they? Abandoning them would leave Starbucks vulnerable to other litigation, they say. Yeah, because you'd be confessing you were being racially discriminatory and sexually discriminatory this entire time and violating federal law for years. And just imagine how many people out there didn't get a job at Starbucks, or didn't get a promotion at Starbucks, or didn't get a benefit from Starbucks, and they have to question, was it because I'm fill in the blank? Quote, we remain committed to creating a culture of warmth and belonging where everyone is welcome, unquote, a company spokeswoman said. In court, Starbucks and its officials also argue NCPPR doesn't represent shareholders who have rejected previous proxy proposals from the group, suggesting Starbucks favors liberal or quote-unquote woke perspectives. I set aside the politics. What does the law say? Either it's legal or it's not. Either it falls within the boundaries of Title VII and or the Supreme Court decisions in Steelworkers and Transportation Agency, or they don't. Okay? All the ideological stuff, all the culture war stuff set aside, look at the law. What does the law say? Yes or no? That's all I'd ask. Coca-Cola is among the companies that has already backtracked. In early 2021, then General Counsel Bradley Gayton addressed a letter to outside law firms saying that 30% of new legal work for the soda giant should be performed by lawyers who are women, LGBTQ+, disabled, or members of racial and ethnic minority groups. Law firms had to report demographic data to Coke, which could cut their fees if the guidelines weren't met, the letter said. Gayton stepped down from the role 3 months later. Are we going to have ESG mentioned anywhere in this by any chance? Any kind of ESG credit score kind of attempts here? Yeah, and this is the same thing I've been looking at for years. Blatant and blunt statements from corporate officers saying in no uncertain terms that they have quota goals for people on the basis of non-determinative factors of their character and merit. And yet nothing has happened. Now something's happening. Thank goodness. American Civil Rights Project, a nonprofit law firm that also represents NCPPR in its Starbucks lawsuit, threatened to sue Coke on behalf of shareholders. In a letter to the company that June, the group called the policies, quote, textbook violations, unquote, of Section 1981. Well, to me, also textbook violations of Title VII. I don't know why you got to keep reaching back to the 1866 Civil Rights Law when you've got Title VII, which kind of covers the whole shebang, in my opinion, but whatever. In early 2022, Gayton's successor, Monica Howard Douglas, wrote to the American Civil Rights Project that while the company remained fully committed to advancing DEI in the legal profession, she had contacted law firms to tell them the guidelines were never company policy. I mean, sure, they were never company policy. A chilling effect. America First Legal Foundation, the group backing the Texas lawsuit against Amazon, has written to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, urging the 4 current commissioners to bypass the usual complaint process and open investigations into diversity practices at a range of brand name companies. Please. And by the way, if anybody from America First Legal Foundation or the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission wants any more examples of corporate malfeasance when it comes to discrimination laws, I've got a library of videos for you to look at. I've got a whole list of other companies and examples I could provide you. Some big name companies that are not in this article and probably should be scrutinized. Well, not even probably, they should. Andrea Lucas, who was nominated to the commission by President Trump, declined to comment on the likelihood that she or other commissioners would open investigations. She said she sees, quote, significant legal and practical risk, unquote, in many corporate diversity programs. That's being diplomatic, in my opinion. Quote, equal opportunity is our charge, she said of the agency's mission, quote, but the law does not demand equal outcomes, unquote. Well, then the E in DEI might just be a signal that something's not right. Civil rights lawyers say conservative activists' arguments distort the original purpose of laws designed to protect groups that historically have had fewer labor market opportunities or difficulty cracking corporate ceilings. That's beside the point. And that's the problem I had with the steelworkers and transportation agency decisions. You don't change the game by reversing the rules. You don't make exceptions to things that say thou shalt not discriminate by saying, well, most of the time. It doesn't work. Either we are changing the way we operate or we're not. Quote, the intent here is more political gain and a chilling effect. Unfortunately, it's effective, said Katie Euchre, an attorney with the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, which has been tracking challenges to corporate programs. Yeah, it's a chilling effect. Unfortunately, it's effective. Okay, well, let me ask you something, Kelly Euchre. If there was a DEI program that benefited contractors who were white and male, to the exception of anyone else, what would you say about that program? Oh, well, it's not addressing a historical this, that, or the other. Oh, okay, so is that the standard? Is that going to be the standard? You have to be able to draw a line and say, oh, well, this demographic in some way, shape, or form were historically underserved. Okay, well, what about the Irish? What if I had a program that only allowed a benefit to people who are of Irish ancestry? because we know how the Irish have been treated historically, both in America and elsewise, historically. What about that? Would that be acceptable then? If I can find anything in a historical context where a bad thing happened to somebody's great-great-great-great-grandfather, is that enough to discriminate on the basis of race or ethnicity or gender? You tell me, where is the line drawn? Either we are promoting egalitarianism in this country under the laws that we have, or we're not. In Florida, a federal judge last year halted enforcement of provisions in HB 7, better known as the Stop Woke Act, which would have restricted private employers from conducting some diversity-related training. The judge said the measures violated companies' free speech rights. Governor Ron DeSantis' administration has appealed the decision. I can't remember if that's the one that Ranting Monkey and I read on the air. If it is, I could see how that'd be the case, because if it's that or something similar, there was a lot of ambiguity to the writing of some of those laws and provisions. The pressure leaves employers vulnerable to litigation for either going too far or not far enough in addressing barriers to equity and inclusion, lawyers say. Quote, employers still have obligations to comply with civil rights statutes, unquote, said Charles McLaurin, senior counsel with the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund. Do they? Do they have obligations to comply with civil rights statutes? Because sure doesn't look like it. Hasn't sounded like it for the nigh on 7 years now. If you say so, though. Rolling back DEI programs designed to expand workplace opportunities, he added, quote, has the potential of creating a hostile environment for certain marginalized groups. Companies would still face exposure, unquote. Yes, because they're breaking the law. Because they're taking actions that are contradictory to what we're supposed to be working towards in this country, and instead celebrating things that are backwards. Oh, this racial discrimination is good, while this racial discrimination is bad. This gender discrimination is good. This gender discrimination is bad. Now, let us set a quota for the kinds of people we want to have in our workforce and a date by which we want to achieve this, and also put effectively a financial bounty incentive on achieving those goals. But let's not think about the implications, Always Sunny in Philadelphia, the implication of that kind of initiative as compares to the history in this country and the laws that we already have established. No. Only now does it become a problem that people are willing to put their legal teeth into. I mean, I'm glad it's happening at all, but I think too, and as I said above, they really, and both the people promoting this, as far as promoting lawsuits, and the people going against it, really, I would hope, they won't, but I hope, need to leave the political propaganda at the doorstep and just focus on the law and the spirit of what the Civil Rights Act meant to do. And everything else in this country that's tried to lead up to a point where we're not evaluating each other on the basis of race and gender anymore for opportunities or benefits. It's ridiculous. Thank you, Derek LaRue. As always, thank you so much again for your continued generosity and support. I really appreciate it, especially on a random ambush stream that I didn't give much notice for before it happened. Thank you, Derek, so much. Hope you're having a good afternoon. But there you go. That's the article. That's just a small list of the companies that I think need a lot more attention. And I hope more companies included in this list are scrambling to change their ways. That, I don't think, should leave them held harmless from what they've done previously. But this kind of thing needs to stop. It needs to stop full. Either we are a better country than we were in 1964, or we're not. That's, to my mind, that's the long and the short. Let's see. Some comments from you guys, and then I'll wrap it up so I can go have some lunch or something. Super Koopa. Starbucks is like a cockroach. It'll keep going no matter what, even though there's way better and cheaper coffee. Well, they're committed. They're committed. Remember, I don't know if you guys remember this. There was a very brief initiative. I think it was imposed by, at the time, either CEO or chairman or whatever he was, Howard Schultz. This was, I can't remember if it was after Ferguson or one of those events, but he mandated that the baristas at Starbucks, when handing out drinks to customers, would write on the cup #RaceTogether in order to start a conversation about race in this country and things like that. Yeah, that went, that aged like milk within about a week, and then they stopped doing that. But I remember that. I remember that was very dramatic. That was really great. Let's see. John Miller, I hope this goes well and burns DEI into the shallow grave it deserves. We'll see. We'll see. Again, as I have been for nearly the entirety of my channel's lifespan, I've been bewildered that any of this has been going on as prolifically as it has without major challenge. I'm glad it's happening now, but boy, oh boy, does it seem like a day late and a dollar short. Tyrannus, Alexandrius, the Invictus Lich. It was Ferguson. I remember that one. I thought it was Ferguson. I wasn't sure if it was sometime later in the timeline of things, but I was pretty sure it was Ferguson or something similar. Who else? Meh, talking Latin at me. I'm not even going to try. Quam sub aqua maledicere temptet. Why is there a big portal opening up in the corner of my room? There's a dimensional shambler coming through at non-Euclidean angles. What did you do? What did I do? Anyway, everyone, I'm going to call it here. My voice is starting to go out because I don't think I've drank enough water today. And I have some lunch to have before I have to go back and do work stuff. So if I didn't get your comment on the chat, please leave a comment in the comments section below when you have the opportunity to. Please leave a like on the way out if you would. Just as a semi-programming note, apparently, fingers crossed, on all that, I'm going to be interviewed this week. I have been invited to an interview where I'm the subject, and I'm going to be interviewed. I don't know when it'll be posted, because I believe these things are recorded and then later on, packaged and posted. I'm going to be interviewed by Benjamin Boyce sometime this week. So as soon as I know more about that and when that might be released, I'll let you guys know. I'm both excited and nervous for that because I don't know if I belong amongst such august company as is usually his guests, but I suppose we'll see. Beyond that, Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern will be another edition of TED Excellence, where I'll once again take a look at an off-brand TED Talk on a subject I have not decided upon yet, because who knows what TEDx will post between now and then. So just wait for that. And otherwise, the Sunday stream, if you can believe it, will happen Sunday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern, where I'll talk about a thing. Not sure yet. In the meantime, if you're not familiar with my channel otherwise, or looking for other things to listen to regarding, myself talking, I have several things on my channel, including playlists for Familiar with the Matter, my one interview show, and then Living on Borrowed Crime, my newest interview series, talking to true crime content creators, along with playlists for a whole ton of other stuff that I made over the years, scripted and otherwise, on various subjects. And what else can I plug while I'm here? I have a merch store. There's a link below if you want a Pepperjack t-shirt or a TED Excellence mug or something. And yeah, I think that's enough shilling of myself today. Anyway, everybody, thank you so much for joining me. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things, even though everyone here is so well behaved. You have very, very little to do. Everybody who donated either to myself or to the fundraisers I completely forgot to post in the chat, because that would have been the smart thing to do. Well, trust me, when Thursday rolls around and TEDx comes up, Keeverdam will make sure to be my backup hard drive memory that those are up there when they need to be. Okay, I feel bad now. Anyway, everybody, have a good rest of your Tuesday. Have a good rest of your week. Hope to see you on Thursday. I hope you're all safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.